Welcome to Babycastles Game of the Month Club, Demon's Souls. I'm Robin Enrico. I picked this topic. I wanted to talk about a Souls game, and for reasons we will get into over the course of the evening, this kind of jumped to the head of the pack over other games in the Souls series. It kind of became the one that was worth talking about in this moment right now. So, before we talk about what Demon's Souls is, let's talk about who made Demon's Souls, which is From Software. Nice photo of their offices here. From Software was formed in 1986 in Tokyo, Japan. For their early part, they're basically about the first 10 years of their history, they're developing productivity software. Like, they're developing early Japanese PC management software. This changes in 1994 when they released their first game, kind of in collaboration with Sony, who is like this new player to the console scene. They need new IPs. They released the game Kingsfield. This is as cover of Kingsfield. The Kingsfield series was published by ASCII in North America. They also did the Shadow Tower series, which was published by Agitech in North America. The Echo Knight series, published by Agitech again. And the Otogi series, published by Sega for the Xbox. You're kind of maybe noticing something about this. A lot of different series, a lot of different publishers. There are kind of other main series outside of the Souls games is the Armored Core series, which is a mech combat series of games, which has spanned PlayStation 1, 2, 3, Xbox 360. Those have been published by Agitech, Sega, Ubisoft. The reason I bring up all these other publishers is kind of so you understand From's place in the world. They don't really publish their own games, especially outside of Japan. They are this weird middle-tier developer that, especially in this era, still exists. They do big, expansive games, and Demon's Souls is a big, expansive game. A relatively big-budget game. But they kind of can't do it without the assistance of other publishers, without the help of others, especially outside of their home market. So let's talk about the publishing of Demon's Souls. Demon's Souls is, and you saw it in the title screen if you played it, this game doesn't happen without Sony. And we were talking about it earlier tonight. They were like, why hasn't this been remade? Why hasn't this been published on other systems? It's because Sony owns it. They don't own the engine, they don't own the deeper concepts, but they own the IP. So when this releases in February 2009 in Japan and Asia, it's published by Sony. It's later released in October of 2009 in America by Atlas. And then when it comes to Europe in summer of 2010, almost a year later, it's published by Bandai Namco. So if you played Dark Souls, the reason those are published by Bandai Namco is because they started this relationship here. Well, this is weird, right? Why would a Sony-owned game not be published by Sony in all territories? Like, they paid money to make this. Why is somebody else making money off of this now? Apparently they had no plans to release it outside of Japan. They were like, well, this isn't going to be good. No one outside of Japan is going to like this game or want to buy this game. So From basically had to ask Atlas and ask Bandai Namco, like, could you publish this elsewhere? And this is, not early internet, but in 2009, the internet is not as super ubiquitous as it is now. And this is kind of one of these games that people on the internet were importing the roughly translated Asian English copy just to play this game. So this game had a lot of hype, but Sony didn't really believe in it at first. As of 2017, it sold 1.7 million copies. It is a greatest hit seller on PlayStation 3. Just to tell you the aftermath of that, when they partnered again in 2015 for Bloodborne, Sony releases it everywhere on the same day. They did not make the same mistake twice. But at the time, From was kind of an untested developer. They didn't have the hype they have around them now. They were kind of this Japanese developer who just kind of got along. After Demon's Souls, and especially after Dark Souls, they're a big deal. So let's talk about the development of Demon's Souls. How do we come to the game that we were all playing just a few minutes ago? When we were playing it earlier, somebody was like, man, these textures are really basic. This is a next generation system, but it kind of looks like an up-res PlayStation 2 game. That's not far off from what actually happened. So Demon's Souls started life as a successor to the Kingsfield series. This is their first game. This is their first IP. They hadn't made one in a while, the last one being Kingsfield 4 in 2001. So it'd been about 8 years since they'd put out a Kingsfield game. They're like, oh, we should revive this IP. Sony likes this IP. They're giving us money to revive this IP. Let's bring it back. And we even know this. In an interview with MTV News, Sony Computer Entertainment Japan producer Takeshi Kaji said, Kingsfield was a game that sparked the idea for the Demon's Souls project, but we didn't base it completely off that game. So they went into this project trying to make a game like Kingsfield. This is Kingsfield 4 for the PlayStation 2. If you look at the Kingsfield 1, Kingsfield 2, Kingsfield 3, they are like Dorito Monster, super primitive games. But even, and let's take a look at what the last Kingsfield game looks like. Now, if you guys saw me in the Shrine of Storms over in Demon's Souls, fighting skeleton monsters is clearly a thing that From is very into. They love you fighting skeletons. But you can see how slow and clunky and like it's from the first person. And kind of what happens is in trying to make this game, fighting skeletons, right? In trying to make this game, they can't make it. So what basically gets said is initially the project was internally considered a failure, with the team being unable to produce a compelling prototype. They can't make this game, and yet they're being paid by Sony to make this game. But it's 8 years later on a new system, and they can't make something that's any fun, okay? Now this is doubly compounded for the fact that, yeah, they haven't made a game like this in a long, long time. So From had never really made a game this big on a next-generation system. The Kingsfield series is based on a PlayStation 1 game. And in the time in between, they've mostly been making Armored Core games. They've been making these mech combat games, not a fantasy role-play game. So they kind of don't have anybody on staff who's really made a game like this in years and years and years. And the only other game that kind of is contemporary with Demon's Souls, and it has kind of been forgotten, but it's worth looking at, is Ninja Blade, which comes out the month before on Xbox 360. It's kind of like a game of that time. It's a God of War-esque, quick-time event action game. It's very forgettable, right? It's like perfectly fine, but compared to a game like Demon's Souls, which is unique and has a vision, this is just a game where you're a ninja. You know, so they kind of are going out on a limb on this. Okay, well, that plays to the game's favor. What happens is, Hidetaka Miyazaki, and he directed Armored Core for Answer, was placed as game's director and changed pretty much everything about the project, making a separate entity from Kingsfield, so they go like, okay, that's no longer a first-person game, we don't have to be beholden to this IP. And he comes in with what he says, different core game design concepts. And in a 2015 interview with The Guardian, he says, I figured I could find a way to take control of the game, and I could turn it into anything I wanted. Best of all, if my ideas failed, nobody would care. It was already a failure. And this is why the game gets to be what it is. They basically were like, look, if you can do something with this, great, because we're stuck, and we owe a game to Sony, and we don't know what to do. And kind of we're just going to tell them it was a disaster, and they're like, but if you can do something, do it. And that gives him a very rare opportunity to have basically full creative freedom on this game, which is why they end up making a game like Demon's Souls, a game that doesn't really have too many precedents, or doesn't really have anything in their wheelhouse like it, because they were just like, yeah, just do whatever you want. So, what is Demon's Souls? All right, now you all played it, or you all watched us play it earlier, and nothing is quite the same as playing it in motion, right? But Demon's Souls is a non-linear action RPG in a dark fantasy world, and people were remarking on that. They're like, this is very metal. And it's like, yeah, it is. Like, and the deeper you get into it, the more metal, the more Lovecraftian this game is. It starts to strip away the simple sword and shield fantasy tropes. The other thing I focus on is that this is a non-linear action RPG. And we'll get into this in a bit. What is very interesting about this game is that it is shockingly Western in its ethos for a game made in Japan. Some things to note, there's a heavy emphasis on dying and retracing your steps. You saw us die, even when I had my hubris and was like, I got this. Like, those skeleton guys trashed me. And it's highlighted by the soul recovery mechanic. So this is maybe the most Japanese part of the game. That it is based on repetition. It is based on learning patterns. It is based on doing something over and over again until you master it. And you are rewarded for learning from your mistakes, because if you die, as long as you make it back to where you were when you died and don't make the same mistake again, you recover all your progress. So a lot of people were like, I couldn't get past the first level of this game, and I understand that. But kind of the idea is that if you played that first level enough, if you smashed your head against it enough, you would eventually go, oh wait, no, I know where every enemy is in this level. I know what everything does. I kind of can predict what's going to happen because it always happens exactly the same. So where this becomes very Western is that you have a customizable character, various classes, echoing kind of character classes in D&D. Okay, if you're familiar with the form, Japanese roleplay games are roleplay in name only. You kind of are just playing out a story. It's more like being an actor in a play. You don't have a lot of agency about where the story goes or who your character is. But Western games, mostly PC-based stuff like Fallout or Baldur's Gate, things that are really coming from Dungeons & Dragons instead of kind of a Japanese interpretation of Dungeons & Dragons, you play a role and you create the role. So the first thing you do when you open up the game is you make your own character. You give them a name, you give them a class, you give them stats. This is even further enforced by the fact that you can play this game in any sequence you want. After you suffer through that first stage, the entire rest of the game is open to your choice. You can go wherever you want. You go to the Archstone and you go to the level you wish to go to. Beyond that, so you pick an initial starting class, but every time you gain a level, every time you power up, you choose where you spend your points. So if you started as a magic user and go, I don't like being a magic user anymore, once you start leveling up, you can put your points towards other skills. Or if you start as a fighter and you go, I'm too slow, which I literally went through when playing it today. I was like, I can't move fast enough. I started taking off my armor, and when I put in points, when I leveled up, I was like, make me faster, make me faster. You have that level of customization, so you're not ever stuck really on one track. In a huge differentiation from most games, you can just kill people. If you've played like traditional 16-bit roleplay games, the townspeople will be like, you need to stop the Dark Lord. Thank you, hero. And that you just have a little conversation where they're like, I'll sell you potions. Okay? You have your sword in the town. If you choose to kill people, you can. And there may be instances where it is to your advantage to kill people. You get to take their stuff. And some people, and we'll get into this, are not your friends. And you will want to kill them because they're a danger to you. But you can totally screw up and just kill valuable non-player characters. And it's just, it's your choice.
Usually it's an accident.
Yes.
Putting down the controller.
Yeah, you set the controller down, stab. Yeah. Oops. Well, that guy's dead now. And that's not coming back. The other way in which this is very kind of Western and getting into this freedom of choice thing. In older Japanese roleplay games, you are on a track and the story unfolds in front of you. There is very little story told to you in Demon's Souls. It is very passively told to you. And one of the main ways in which you actually get any kind of story is in the item descriptions, which you don't have to read. There's no burden of proof on you to read them. They're just there, and if it's like, well, if you want to know more about this world, more about what's going on, read these item descriptions. But if not, you can just play this as an action game. So, this is from Miyazaki. He says, our goal was to allow players to do what they want, define their own goals, make their own discoveries, embrace their own values, and find their own interpretations. Core to that was the importance of getting lost. This gives value and meaning to finding one's own way. I like this idea. Just as you make your own character, just as you kind of go your own way, and just as the story is kind of barely there, the story of Demon's Souls is your story of Demon's Souls. It's your version of what happened. And having played this game through 3 times now, I definitely have a very set story of the first time I played, where I was dying and desperate and doomed. And then the second time, when I came back 2 years later and was like, okay, I know what to do now. This is actually very easy. And then I have a third story of the time I played it through for this talk, and I was like, okay, I want to try to see a lot of things. I want to try to do a lot of things I haven't done before because I want to record them for the talk, or like experiment with them for the talk. I think this time is the only time I ever played it online. I think the first 2 times I didn't play it online. So each time I played it, it was a different story. Even though some of the beats were the same, different beats inside of it were different. And definitely nothing will ever compare to the first time, when this is all unseen territory, right? When I am just being like, what do I do? Like, I don't have a chance here. And getting over that hurdle and having that moment where I'm like, I'm not lost in the woods anymore. I've figured it out. So, part of the reason I jumped Demon Souls to the head of the list here, because the online function is going away. And the online function is really what makes this game revolutionary, and is kind of an integral part of this game. So you have a unique asynchronous online multiplayer, and this continues in any of the Souls games. Like, they invent it here, and they don't change it much for the next almost 10 years now. You have messages, bloodstains, summons, and invasions. So, let's talk about summoning and invading. Summoning is, you get the blue phantom. You can go, please, help me. I need help. And someone from the internet, an unknown stranger from the internet, will come to help you. Or you can say, you know what, I want to help people. And you can throw down your sign, and you can be summoned into other people's worlds to help them. So you can be desperate, or you can be a hero here, right? Or you can go in and kill people. And you don't have a choice if people are invading you. You can go and help people, or you can go, no, I'm just going to kill people and take all their stuff. It's your choice. And this is kind of the closest the game has to traditional multiplayer. It's a traditional co-op and traditional versus mode. But what's really different is you don't get to pick. You can't summon your friend. You can't get invaded by your friend. It is a random stranger online. All you're going to get is their screen name. And beyond that, there's no voice chat. So you can't talk to each other. So you can't be like, hey buddy, like help me out, like I need help over there, and you can't get called a racial slur, right? And this is kind of the ethos behind Demon Souls, is this weird half online multiplayer. It's not traditional. And again, this is where more of the Japanese design starts to come through. You'll see bloodstains. You can see other players' deaths. And you can see where other players died, and they can see where you died. You don't see their name, you don't know anything about them, but you can see the end of their story. You know, this guy was fighting in the Nexus, and he didn't make it. And I'm just like, okay, what happened? I don't know. Sometimes you'll even just see the pale outline of people in the world. You'll see other players, and you'll go like, I know there are these other people going through their own story of this game at the same time I do. I don't know their names, I can't speak to them, but I know they're out there. And more than that, in a very direct way, you can leave messages for people. You can drop a little message in the game telling people about things. But just like you can't use voice chat and you can't talk to people, if you use the messaging system, it's really like kind of a Mad Libs plug-in of things you can say to people. You're very limited in what you can say. You can't say anything negative. You can only give like little helpful hints to try and get people through the game. If you don't give up, you can proceed. They're very encouraging. Well, what's useful about this is you can upvote those messages. And it gives the other person a health boost in the game. Yeah, you can be, if you leave messages, suddenly you'll be playing the game and you'll be like, oh, my health is refilled. Well, it means somebody in some other world has gone, I like giving you a thumbs up on your message. So there's a real encouragement in this game to be helpful, like to leave positive messages. Or if you're this guy, I'm in trouble, please recommend this message. You can help out a buddy, because you're like, yep, no, I know, this game is brutally hard. Here you go, man. Look, 118 ratings. Like, people were helping this guy out. So where does this come from? This is a really interesting fact about Miyazaki's design choices on this game. He says, the root of my fantasy ideas are in Sorcery by Ian Livingstone and Steve Jackson, the adventure game books. And Sorcery is this series that published from 1983 to 1985. So I had never heard of adventure game books before getting really into the Souls series and learning about Miyazaki. Have you guys played Choose Your Own Adventure books? They are like an advanced version of Choose Your Own Adventure. They are Dungeons and Dragons for kids with no friends. You kind of play it, read through a book, and it has the you get to the Choose Your Own Adventure part, but instead of go to page 5 if you want to do this, go to page 10 if you want to do this, you roll the dice like you would in Dungeons and Dragons. And then depending on the dice roll, you go to a different part of the book. And you keep a sheet and tabs on all this information. So it's this more advanced Choose Your Own Adventure. It's this weird solo D&D. But think about this. It's an English language book. In 1983, 1985, when Miyazaki is young, he's in Japan. So he's reading this fantasy novel in a language that is not his native language. This is kind of one of the central metaphors of Demon Souls. Being in a fantasy world where you can't fully talk to anyone, where you can't fully communicate. And you kind of have to do this vague form of communication. If you played into it, or if you played in the other Souls games, one of the big communications you have is the gesture system. I can't say anything to you, but all of these physical gestures are kind of universal. So even though we don't speak the same language, and Dark Souls 2, Bloodborne, all of them, you play with players from around the world. The servers are worldwide, so it doesn't matter that you can't speak to one another. You can still do these basic gestures and communicate, and you can still get through this horror fantasy world together. So, like I said, the reason I bumped this up is because if you don't play Demon Souls in the next month, you can never play it the way it was originally intended to be played. All the invasions, all the summoning, all the messaging, all the bloodstains, all the pale shadows, they're gone. You can still play the entire game, you can still see everything, but this really extra metatextual layer to the game will be gone forever. And it was interesting playing it through this time. I didn't used to play online because I'm like, people are going to invade me, they're going to kill me. And now, to play through it online, as a much more confident player, nobody invaded me and I couldn't summon anybody, but I really got into the messaging system. I really got into trying to leave as many helpful messages as I could and upvote every message I saw. Because it was I'm helping people. I'm the helper. And that felt really good and really changed my playthrough of the game. It felt a lot less lonely in that world, knowing there were other people dropping messages and voting for mine. So let's get into some of the deeper themes and ideas of Demon Souls. Miyazaki says, this is an analogy we often use. We're trying to create a game that is spicy, and we want to make it as spicy as possible, but still edible, and also to make it taste good, so that it leaves you wanting more. Right. It's a spicy game. It was a hard game. But the reason people get so into this game is, even me playing it here and getting stomped, I was like, man, I got this. I know, just give me one more chance. I can get this if you give me one more chance. I know I can do this. It's just on that threshold of being unfair. It's not unfair. It's hard. So you can be burned by a dragon. You can have a giant demon come and get you. You can be in a swamp of Lovecraftian horrors. Oh, you can face a D&D mind flayer that will suck your brains out. Giant mosquitoes will poison you and give you the plague. A monster made of leeches will fight you. Oh, and you'll fight a giant stingray on a cliff face. These are colossal monsters. And as you've realized, you are flimsy. Your character is made of paper. You are doing virtually the impossible in going up against these odds. Kind of one of the things that's intriguing about this game is, unlike other games, every fight in this game is a battle of life and death. Every fight, the smallest enemy can wipe you out. So, not only is this a nightmare world, you're on your own. There are a couple merchants and blacksmiths who can help you. There are occasional NPCs out in the wilderness who might sell you something. We met Ostrava in 1-1. If you played through that, you're like, oh, a companion. You have to save him. He's terrible. He's a worse fighter than you, despite his fancy golden armor. There is one NPC down a very secret quest line, Yor of the Twin Fangs, who will help you defeat a boss, and he's incredibly powerful. But he's very well hidden, and he only saves you like once. And then there's Patches. So you're in the second area of the Shrine of Storms, and you see these glowing lights, and you run into this guy, and he says, "Go on, have a look. There's more riches than I've ever dreamed of." He's like, "Go look in the hole. Go check it out." You look down. He kicks you in the butt. Down you go. He says, "Ha ha, don't hold it against me. Take your time starving to death, then I'll steal every last trinket off your corpse." Right? So NPCs betray you. They are actively hostile to you. And Patches isn't even the worst. In the Tower of Latria, you'll spy Yurt the Silent Chief locked up in a cell. So you see a character locked up in a cell. You're like, "I gotta save him," even though he looks like Darth Vader. Like, I gotta rescue this guy. Well, if you let Yurt out, next time you come back to the Nexus, next time you come back to your hub, there's going to be dead bodies around. And it starts out with characters that don't mean anything. But if you let him go, he's going to start killing people who matter. He's going to kill the shop owners. He's going to kill the Maiden in Black who lets you level up. And that's a really big problem. So if you let the serial killer back in your home, you got to go kill him. You let this guy out, you got to deal with this, right? Patches, he kind of tricks you, but you can get out of his trap. This guy can, like, ruin your game. He can literally put you in an almost no-win situation. That is very hostile game design, because there's only the barest signal, like, "Hey, why when I come home are there a bunch of dead bodies around? Maybe somebody's killing them. Maybe it's the guy who looks like a Black Knight, possibly." So we're talking about this a bit with the online portion. There's this big theme of communication in this game. And this is Miyazaki again. But the main concept behind the death system is trial and error. The difficulty is high, but always achievable. Everyone can achieve without all that much technique. All you need to do is learn from your deaths how to overcome the difficulties. Overcoming challenges by learning something in games is a very rewarding feeling. And that's what I wanted to prioritize in Dark Souls and Demon Souls. And because of the online, you can even learn something from somebody else's death. I'd say that was the main concept behind the online, too. He's like, if you pay attention, if you are observant, this game is not as hard as you think it is. I give you hints as to what's going to happen. Sometimes you can have other players leave a message for you telling you where to go. A good example of this is the first boss of the Tower of Latria, the Fool's Idol. You can't kill. You'll kill it and it'll come back to life. And you go, "Oh my god, what do I do? This boss won't die." Well, another player might leave a message. He goes, "They're up above." Who's up above? What am I supposed to do? There's a wizard who resurrects the boss right over there. If you don't kill that guy first, you can't kill the boss. There is nothing in-game to tell you that. Now, you can stumble across this guy, and because he's a monster, you might go, "I better kill him," right? But it's kind of up a hidden pathway. So it really helps if there's somebody who's like, "Hey, dude, there's something else you have to do." So this is me leaving messages to help people. I got lost in this area, and I'm like, "Here, this is it. Go down this pathway." This is a dead end. You come to this big flame, and these guys worshiping it, and you're like, "I don't know what to do anymore." Well, you got to kill them. So I left this message. There's no message to be like, "Kill these guys," but I can at least go, like, "Do this." Sometimes people can leave trick messages. This guy says, "Fall," and if you do that, you fall to your death. Sometimes people can leave joke messages for you. You better believe I upvoted this one. All right. So as much as we're like, this is a hostile world, there's a lot that people can do to help you, especially the online component, which is, again, why it's like we need to play this now, because you'll never see that message again. All these helpful messages I leave for you, you leave for me, they'll be gone. They said, number one, the difficulty is not dependent on skill level of the user. We've not created a game where players who react faster or press buttons faster fare better than others. Second, when a player dies, we try to leave a sense of, maybe if I try a different strategy, I can succeed. Things that you lose in death can be outweighed by what you gain in trying again. We try to give the players lots of freedom to design their own gameplay style, and we've implemented enough content to enable users to continue challenging themselves and continue making progress. So not only do players give you hints, the game gives you hints. Remember this. Remember being burned alive. Well, you should have seen it coming. You saw the dragons before. And what do you see around the dragons? What do you see right here? Smoking corpses, right? Corpses turned to ash. And if you're foolish enough to run out there, you're going to get burned alive. This is the first area. When you come to the bridge in the second area, what do we see? Wait a minute. There's those burned corpses again. I guess the dragon is about, right? It doesn't tell you, look out, dragon. But it gives you everything to piece that puzzle together. In the first area, you can take either the left or right path. And you don't know which way you should go. On the right path is the knight with red eyes, who is almost impossible to beat at this stage in the game. On the left is the knight with blue eyes. Which one is easier? They look exactly the same, other than the color of their eyes. But it's this subtle hint, like, hey, maybe don't fight the monster with red eyes. He's maybe tougher. In the Valley of Defilement, you are in the swamp. You are in the dark. You are in the pouring down rain. You're like, where do I go? Well, if you've played this far in the game, you know that when you see that glowing yellow light, there's treasure there. They have carefully placed treasure drops and those glowing lights to pull you deeper into the level, to tell you where to go. You see those lights off in the distance, you know, okay, there's something over there. I can't see it from here, but I should probably head in that direction. I should take a chance and go that way. Sometimes it's very obvious. People didn't know to pull this switch, so this is actually the only phantom you'll see that without going online. Oh! I think literally they play tested and were like, people don't know to pull this switch. Even beyond just how to play this game, we talked about how the story is very hidden. There's a lot of environmental storytelling in this game. So Miyazaki says, yes, I don't want to make a game that chases the story, so we refrain from putting in too much information. And the hints were made vague in order to make the player become one with the story. We just provided information in certain areas to help stimulate the player's imagination. So, for those who want to know the story, there are lots of hints. The question is where to find them. A lot of information is written here and there in item descriptions, and so we want to know more. I would like players to read them. So he's like, I don't want to beat you over the head with the story, but I'll leave a lot of clues, a lot of breadcrumbs for you to follow, and if you find them, you'll know a lot more about what's actually going on here. So this is the Shrine of Storms. Like, I'd never noticed this wall full of skulls. I'd never really paid much attention to this kind of unmarked hero's grave here. And I was like, why are this cluster of skeletons here? It never appears anywhere else. None of those objects appear anywhere else in the game. They're kind of telling a little story of the journey you're on here. You kind of start to realize that the Shrine of Storms is a trial. It is a warrior's trial that you are going through. And you are seeing kind of everyone else who failed. So that by the time you get to the Storm King and literally pull a sword out of a stone to strike down this terrifying monster, you have fulfilled the hero's journey that is implicit in the Shrine of Storms. And you end the level with like the clouds opening and the sun coming through as you're on this cliff face. In this moment, you are a champion. It doesn't tell you that. It lets you figure that out. From all these like clues. Again, going back to Miyazaki's experience reading these game books in a language he doesn't understand. He knows enough to know what's going on, but he knows he's missing part of the story. And it's cool that he's like, I want a game where you feel that. Where you only feel like you know part of what's going on, but you feel the big emotions of it. How do I know there's a big spider in Stonefang Tunnel? Like, I'm like, I bet I'm going to fight a big spider. How do I know things have gone bad in the Tower of Latria? They're crucifying people on wagon wheels. What happened here? I don't know. Well, when I get to the king's throne, look at this. This is madness. Who stacks up chairs in just this random pile and puts their throne atop of it? You kind of realize the king of this area went insane. And this is all the outgrowth of that. We see again people being crucified in the Valley of Defilement, but this is maybe even a darker thing. They're being crucified and turned into torches to light this dark place. This is a wretched, horrible place. Life is cheap here. When you get to the end of it, the end room, you have these bloody, resurrected baby monsters. What went on here? We don't know. We don't have somebody saying, like, I threw my baby in this swamp, right? But why else are they there? This is where bad things go. This is the sewer of this world. This is where we throw things we don't want. This is a great little story beat. So in the Valley of the Defilement, you find this rope with these gross slugs hanging off of it. And you're like, ugh, what's going on here? Hack. You knock them down. And then they all fall, and where they fall, you find this glowing sword. And you're like, why was this sword there? Well, you might not know unless you pick it up and read its item description. Large sword of moonlight. The legendary large sword that reflects moonlight. Widely known in associations with moonlight, night, Beto. It's one of the few revelations from God. No one else ever mentions Beto in the game. You never see Beto in the game. What happened to Beto? Oh no! That was him! The slugs ate him. And the slugs ate his armor. He got trapped down here, then they strung him up, and the slugs ate him, but his sword was so magical, it survived. And that's all that's ever left of this guy. And unless you find it, you'd never know. So, there's this other theme running through this game. And it's very of the time. This is 2009, so this is like Bioshock. This is Spec Ops The Line. This is like games that question whether you're actually the good guy or not. But again, it does so subtly. It's not as much like, the real villain was you. You like killing, don't you? Got it. So, again, and this is Miyazaki's philosophy. It's all in the margins, right? He says, whether they're hideous or beautiful or strong, I don't lean towards any particular type. But high-level enemies will be pretty disgusting. Boss monsters. And you might not believe this, but all the monsters I designed from Demon Souls to Dark Souls are beautiful to me, no matter how gruesome their appearance. So he's saying, like, look, you're going to fight these monstrosities, but there's a way in which, to me, they are beautiful. They are living creatures, and they have a dignity to them. So, if you got to the bottom of Stonefang Tunnel, you fight the Dragon God. And here he is, looking like Night on Bald Mountain, about to smash you or burn you into cinders. But by the time you get him down to the lowest of his health, you realize this dragon is trapped in this cave. He can't leave. And when you get close to him to deliver the killing blow, he's pinned down and can't do anything. Look how close you can get to this thing that was once mighty and powerful. You're putting it out of its misery here at the end. Maybe you aren't so good. And that's further amplified when you get to Maiden Estrella at the bottom of the Valley of Defilement. Does this look like a monster? It looks like a demon? No. This is a woman of the church who's come down to this like God-forsaken land and taken the power of the demons to try to use it for good. Let's see what she says.
Leave us, slayer of demons. This is a sanctuary for the lost and wretched. There is nothing here for you to pillage or plunder. Please, leave quietly.
Whoa. Uh-oh. Well, it's going to get worse. So she doesn't even fight you. You have to fight her guard here.
You abandoned us long ago, but what do you have? We live humble lives. Leave us be.
I really like that line. We live humble lives. Leave us be. It's like, so both Maiden Estrella and her soldier guarding her, Garl Vinland, they're like, why are you doing this? We are not monsters. You are invading our land. You are coming to kill us. We're look at us. We live in Poop Town, like, and like we have nothing. What is it you are trying to get from us? So when you come to kill her, she won't even fight back. She will literally take her own life. And she goes, "Do as you like. Take your precious demon soul." Let's actually hear that line.
You killed him, didn't you? Very well. I can no longer resist you. Do as you like. Take your precious demon soul.
The performance there is fantastic. You can just feel the hate. She's just like, this is what you want, fine. You've murdered us. You killed all these people to get down here. Fine, take what you want. There are signs and symbols that what you're doing here isn't that good. And there's an even weirder sort of symbol to you. So you're going to slay these big boss monsters, right? Well, here is the last feature of the game that will disappear in a month. The old monk, the last boss of the Tower of Latria. Here he is on his throne in this yellow wrap. Really, he's this desiccated mummy. He sends the yellow wrap out, and it forms this champion to fight for him. Well, here he is, being formed. It can be you. You can get summoned in to be the old monk's guardian, to fight another human player online. So literally, the last boss of an area can be you. You can spend your game screwing over other players who are trying to beat the game. And willfully, you just sit there and go, okay, summon me in, man. I'm gonna do it. And not only that, you get this yellow wrap, and you get superpowers. You get more powerful than you already are, and you can just screw players over all day long. So this leads us to kind of the climax of the game. And I'm sorry that I'm spoiling it for you, but as I know, many of you will not get through this game. The first time I went through this game, I actually listened to a podcast, Bonfireside Chat, which I highly recommend. They did like an audio podcast talk through of the game. I vicariously beat this game and beat it in my imagination before I ever played it. It didn't ruin anything for me, right? Again, this is not the story of Demon Souls. It is your story of Demon Souls. So you collect all the Demon Souls. The Maiden in Black grabs you, pulls you down into this nether realm, and there she is, and she summons the Old One, this elder god, this god who is causing all this chaos by being awake in the world. And then we're going to have some major plot things dropped on us. It says, "Old One, I have brought thee what thou wishest, thy new demon." So you're like, wait a minute. We were like, I thought I was the hero. Well, now you get it. You are the new demon. This whole thing has been about trying to create the strongest person in the world. And that's now you. And then something else happens. It comes closer and she goes, "Come now, be good." As if she were talking to a child or talking to a pet. And then you start to realize, looking at this monstrosity, this is an idiot god. This is not an omnipotent god. This is just a giant, powerful, destructive force that really doesn't care about humans or think in terms that we think of. You go deeper into this creature. And inside you find King Alon, the man you've been searching for the whole game. And look at him. He is a sludge, toxic waste monster. He has been reduced to this pathetic thing. This is the final boss. He is barely a challenge. He can barely attack you. Other Souls games will repeat this idea where the final boss is a pushover. The final boss is a sad, pathetic creature you're putting out of its misery. And he says, "The pain and suffering that fills this world. The Old One will feed upon our souls and put an end to our tragic realm of existence. No one wishes to go on." He says, no, this isn't a bad thing that's happening. Maybe it's a good thing if the world ends. Life is brutal and painful. It's maybe not the worst thing if this Old One just kind of eats us all and ends all of this. And if you've been through the Valley of Defilement and the Tower of Latria where they're crucifying and torturing people and mutating people and all these horrible things happening, is this world worth saving? So you come to your final choice.
imprison me no longer. I shall lull the Old One back to slumber.
Okay, cool, great, right. The old one's going to go back to sleep, everything's going to go back to normal. I can just walk away from this, right? But wait a minute. If I think way back to near the beginning of the game, I remember something.
We have long awaited you, Slayer of Demons. I am one of the Monumentals. We preserve the fabric of reality. There is something thou needest to know. Once, we too, a scourge of demons faced. In the distant past, under a benevolent rule, the world was united owing to the soul arts. Until a lust for power caused the awakening of the Old One. Across the land seeped a colourless deep fog, and the world faced extinction at the hands of demons. Thanks be, we were able to lull the Old One back to his slumber, yet only after the loss of innumerable souls, and half the world lost, erased by the fog.
This has happened before. You're playing the second time this calamity has happened. So if there's a second time, there's going to be a third, and there's going to be a fourth. This is going to keep happening. And this ties all the way back to the gameplay of the game, right? You keep going in these cycles. You keep trying and trying again until you find the solution. Well, if this is just going to happen again, maybe we make sure it doesn't. There's no sign for it, but just as you could kill any NPC in the game at this final moment, you can kill the Maiden in Black. Step over her, look into the light, greedily reach out towards it, and it says, "The Old One sensed a powerful demon by its side, and before long, the world will be engulfed by the deep fog." So, you can go, "Oh, no, no, no. No, we're going to destroy this world." Whatever happens, you end up right back at the Nexus, and you get to play the game over again. And you get to try things differently, and you get to maybe see if you can come to a solution, but you never will. There's obviously so much more to talk about with this game, but I thought these were a lot of the high points to talk about with Demon Souls. Look, if you get a chance in the next month, try to play it online. It's a perfectly fine game offline. I know it's kind of stuck on PlayStation 3, which is why I kind of didn't want to do it, but I'm glad I got to have this one last go through of this game and really sit down and think about what it's doing.